Hi, everyone. Welcome to HeartStrong. I am so excited to be with you guys here tonight doing our first virtual workshop. So, thanks for tuning in. If you guys have any questions or if you just want to say hello on your right hand side of the screen, there should be a place for you to chat. So, feel free to ask any questions that you have throughout the workshop tonight. And feel free to just highlight anything that you heard that you thought was really valuable information. And so, before we get started, I just want to hello Mary and hello Kathy. Excited that you guys are here. I just want to give you some ground rules for how to approach this. And so if you're sitting at home right now, make sure that you turn off the television, and hopefully you're in a quiet room where you can sit and just hang out and have a great Monday evening for the next 30-45 minutes. Hello to everybody who's saying hi: Jane Ann, Linda, Chris, Brittany, Angela. And so make sure you're in a quiet place. Now, there's a couple of things that will really help you to get the most out of this workshop. The first one is get something to write with. And so if you can take notes throughout this workshop here tonight, even if you never go back and look at those notes ever again, if you write things down, it rewires your neurology and it will help you to retain the information so much better. And so take notes, whatever you think is important or whatever you want to remember or whatever you want to get better in applying in your life, write those things down. Also feel free to write anything over on the right-hand side, again, in that chat that you just want to be like, amen, hallelujah, yes, I want to do that. The second thing is make sure you ask questions. And so again, any questions that you have, any clarity that you need, this is your time to ask that. If for some reason something comes to you later and you want to ask in the office, feel free to do that too. Or feel free to email me or ask me when you come in. And then the very last thing is, I know that there are some people on the line here today who have been to maybe 1, 3, 5, 10 workshops that we've done in our office before. And so some of this stuff you've heard before. And so what I really want you to focus in on is, what is the one thing I can refine? What is the one thing I can really zoom in on? The one thing that's lacking that would take my health to the next level. If you're somebody that has not been to a workshop in a long time, or perhaps this is the first time you've ever heard any of this information, don't be overwhelmed. And so you do not have to change your entire life in, one day or 1 week or even 1 year. It's just about making small baby steps. And if you can make those small changes, that's how you get huge transformation in your health and in your life overall. And so for those of you who are guests on the line here today, a little bit about myself and why I do what I do. I always tell people I became a chiropractor when I was 15. And so when I was 15, my grandfather, who I loved more than anything, moved in with my family because his health was so bad he couldn't take care of himself anymore. And so I saw a man who loved life really deteriorate almost overnight. And what started as back pain for him ended up in kidney failure and liver failure. And every single time something went wrong with his health, the only thing I ever saw given to him was a pill. Until pill after pill after pill after pill, 14 medications later, he's in a hospital bed with tubes coming out of him everywhere. And that's my last memory of him before he died. No doctor ever sat down and truly asked the question, what is causing what he was going through? And because they never asked that question, the only answer they got was pills. And unfortunately, he died way too early, and he died really enjoying the last 10, I'd say, years of his life. And so my hope here tonight for you guys is to continue that journey of starting to learn. And so tonight we're talking about being heart strong. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the slides here for you guys so that you can see them. So we're talking about being heart strong tonight. And so I don't know if you've heard this story before, but there's a story about a frog in a pot. And so the way that the story goes, and I don't know if this is a real experiment or not, but they did some experiment back in the day, and they put a frog in a pot of boiling water. And when they did that, the frog immediately jumped out. And then they said, well, I wonder what would happen if we took a frog and we put it in like lukewarm water in a pot and we slowly started to heat things up. And what they found is when they slowly started to heat things up, the frog wouldn't jump out and it would end up boiling to death. And so the lesson of this story, whether it's true or not, is huge. Don't be the boiled frog. So what do I mean by that? It is, generally speaking, the small habits that you let creep up on you that affect your health and affect your life. And they're habits that you don't even know you have, right? It is coming home and sitting down and opening up that bag of Doritos, or or every morning getting up and having that soda, or the habit that you make of not working out. These things over time, it's not the one decision that creates disease in your life. It is that decision over and over and over and over and over again over the course of not even a week, but really years, that leads you to get boiled in the water. And so don't get boiled, don't get the diagnosis. And so that's what we want to go through here today, is figuring out how we don't be the boiled frog. So, what is the world's #1 death causing disease? Right now, 630,000 people every single year die because of heart disease. It is the disease that we spend the most money on, $1.1 trillion. 1 out of 3 deaths, there's 1 death every 38 seconds from heart disease. And so this is one of the most important subjects that we could talk about, especially right now in the current climate of our health, talking about the coronavirus pandemic that's going on. And so I think most of us know that it's not necessarily the virus in and of itself that's the most dangerous part about what's happening, but it's really those people who have comorbidities that have to worry about this virus. And so a lot of this social distancing and the measures that we're taking right now are in order to help our hospital system to be able to take care of people as they get the virus. But it's not the virus in and of itself that's scary. It is the virus if you already have a pre-existing condition going on. The #1 death-causing comorbidity right now is heart disease. And so that, obesity, people who have cancer, autoimmune conditions, and of course, respiratory issues are the people that really have to worry the most about the coronavirus right now. But this is a very timely topic based on the comorbidity issue. And so I keep wanting to use my arrows here on the computer instead of clicking the screen. And so how did you get to where you are? I think it's important to have this mindset shift. There is a huge difference between treating a symptom and getting to the cause of what's going on in your health. No matter if you're dealing with heart disease or, again, diabetes, cancer, headaches, even back pain, if you ask the question, why is this happening? The answer is never going to be a medication. It's never going to be a pill. It's not that your body is lacking a heart pumping medication, or that your body is lacking a pain medication, or lacking a synthroid medication. There's always a reason why. And so if we can start to ask the question why, that's how we're able to help our body to start to heal better. And in my experience, there are 3 reasons your body doesn't function, and there are 3 reasons you start to develop disease. And if you can address these 3 areas, you can start to reverse it. The first reason is a lack of nerve supply. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the workshop here tonight. But a lack of nerve supply. Number 2 is a lack of nutrients. And those nutrients might be food related, or they could be something cofactors like oxygen or minerals that you might need too. And then the very last one is toxicity. And so lack of nerve supply, lack of nutrients, and toxicity. Those are the 3 reasons why your cells will start to have dysfunction and not be able to function well. And that's when you'll start to get inflammation, pain, and you will develop disease over time. And so again, none of those was a lack of medication in the body. And so we have to stop throwing pills at issues and instead ask that question, why? Understand that our future is determined in the moments of our decision. And the word decision means to cut off. And so right now here tonight, hopefully you're going to make that decision to cut something off, to stop that bad habit that you have been engaging in so that you don't become the boiled frog. And so you have to ask yourself, what do you want? What is holding you back? Is this decision that you're making right now, is the meal that you're about to eat for dinner, is this bringing me closer to health or closer to death and disease? And when you start to filter yourself through that kind of lens, that's when you can start to make better decisions for yourself. And so what is going to be different for you this time? And that's why I want you to really zoom in on that one thing that you're going to change. And so let's start to talk about heart disease. And so one of the biggest myths that I hear, and it's not just heart disease, it's every condition that you can think of under the sun. One of the biggest myths that I get from people is people say, well, I'm just getting old. And so it is a myth. Heart disease does not happen because of age. Heart disease very simply is common because people don't take care of themselves as they get older. And so when you start to look into epigenetics, you find out that genes are not what cause disease. It is your body expressing or not expressing a gene that causes disease. And all of that comes back to how you're treating your body overall. So the empowering part behind this is understanding your decisions have gotten you to where you are, but your good decisions can now take you in the opposite direction or continue you to your new goal that you set for yourself in your health. And so this is a landmark study that happened in 1953. They looked at 300 autopsies that happened during the Korean War. The average age of the person in the autopsy was 22 years old. And this is absolutely incredible. They found that 77% of their hearts had gross evidence, meaning they could visibly see atherosclerosis in the vessels of the heart. And that's at 22 years of age. Some of them had vessels that were clogged off 90% or more. And so what that means is you could be sitting here right now saying, yeah, Dr. Elise, but I don't have heart issues, or I'm young, I'm healthy, I look good, I feel good. Understand that health is not about how you feel, and it's not about how you look. It's truly about how your body is functioning. And it has nothing to do with age, right? We just said, will I get heart disease as I age? Look at this, 22-year-olds who already have plaquing in their arteries. And so the Journal of the American Medical Association concluded that this showed that there are changes that happen very, very early on in our lives. Another article showed that 60% of 15 to 19-year-olds had plaquing in their arteries as well. And so what do we have to look for in risk factors when it comes to this? Generally speaking, when you start to look at literature, we talk about things like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and smoking. I'm not going to talk about smoking here today. If you smoke, you need to stop. There's nothing good that comes from that. But I do want to talk about cholesterol and blood pressure in a little bit more depth because they aren't what you think they are. And so we're going to start with high cholesterol here. So what is cholesterol? And so cholesterol, you have good and you have bad cholesterol. And so the good cholesterol is called your HDL. And so cholesterol is made mostly by your liver. About 80% of it is made by your liver. It's a waxy substance. And you have two different types, HDL and LDL. HDL helps to regulate LDL, and it helps with storage and promotes excretion. And then your LDL is your bad cholesterol, quote unquote. And that is the cholesterol that has issues within the bloodstream. And so the interesting part about cholesterol is your body produces it. And so I want you to ask yourself this question: would your body produce something harmful to itself? And the answer, of course, is no. And so cholesterol is needed, necessary in the body. It's part of hormone metabolism, so it helps with regulation of things like testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, DHEA. It's also involved in cortisol and aldosterone production. It's actually involved in the synthesis of vitamin D, which is also a hormone that your body produces with sunlight. It's necessary for brain health, for bile production, for digestion, for cell membranes. So you need cholesterol. And so where does the bad cholesterol myth come in then? Well, let's talk a little bit about the truth of cholesterol. More people have heart attacks with normal cholesterol levels than elevated cholesterol. And so it is not total cholesterol in your bloodstream that matters. And yet that's generally the gauge that we use for what's going on in our health. And so it's not about the cholesterol, it's about what cholesterol is being damaged. And so LDL is necessary. We just need LDL that is undamaged. And so what happens is you should have these really big, large, fluffy molecules of cholesterol that are floating around in your bloodstream. And so when those cholesterol molecules become damaged, they get smaller and they get sticky. And it is those damaged LDL sticky molecules that can then go onto your blood vessels and plaque there and cause that atherosclerosis. So it's not the presence of LDL in the first place that causes you to have high cholesterol or bad cholesterol that plaques your arteries. It's the damage of cholesterol. Hugely important. And so the question is, what damages cholesterol? And so the two things that damage your cholesterol are sugar and toxins. And so your sugars, which of course come from not just sweets, not just sodas, but really your refined starchy carbohydrates. So anything white, your bread, your pasta, rice, potatoes, all of these things break down into simple sugars and they end up spiking your insulin. And this causes damage to those LDL particles. And then also there's toxins. And so toxins that come from the food that you're eating, if you're eating a ton of processed foods, pesticide-ridden foods, and then also the toxins that really go on in your body within your home. These things damage those cholesterol molecules. And so we really have to cut out the sugar and cut out the toxicity. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more here in a little bit. So if cholesterol isn't the problem with heart disease, what about fat, right? Maybe it's our fat that's causing an issue. There is a study that was done that looked at 350,000 people, and they looked at saturated fat to see if that caused heart disease. And they literally found no association between the two. So another myth is that saturated fat is bad. Saturated fat, again, is produced by the body. And would your body make something that wasn't good for it? And the answer is no. And so it's not the saturated fat that's the problem. It's the saturated fats that are bad and damaged that you're getting from bad sources. There's another study that looked at fat intake and compared that to the risk of stroke. And in this study, they looked at 43,000 men aged 40 to 75 years old. And they looked at them for the course of 14 years. And they found that there was absolutely no evidence in the amount or type of dietary fat that affects the risk of ischemic or hemorrhagic stroke. And this is a Harvard University study that was done. And so it is not fat that causes an issue. It is, of course, the types of fat, good fat versus bad fat that you're consuming. And so you want to make sure that you're doing lots of good fats in your diet. Your cells are made up of what's called a lipid bilayer. So there's 2 layers of fat that surround every single cell that makes up your entire body. So fats are so incredibly important to you. What happens when you have damaged fats is those bad fats, they come into the cell layer, and what's supposed to be a nice fluid lipid bilayer, it becomes rigid. And when it becomes rigid, your body can't get nutrients into the cell that it needs to function, and it can't get toxins out of the cell. And you end up with a damaged, inflamed, toxic cell. And if you get enough of those, that's how you start to get inflammation within the body. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, you name it, can come from that process. So that's the importance of eating good fats. And so remember, we have to ask ourselves, what is the cause of what is going on in our health? One of the most profound statements that I've ever heard is the cause is the cure, and it kind of makes sense. If you can figure out the problem in your health, if you can figure out what's lacking or what's present that shouldn't be there and fix that, you can help your body to heal from the inside out. And so understand that every single drug that was made and put on the market and approved by the FDA that has been pulled was first approved. Every drug that they've ever pulled off of the market because of adverse side effects, because of birth defects, because of all kinds of things, if you look at the history of drugs, it was once approved. And so just because your doctor is telling you to take a medication does not mean it's safe. Statins and blood pressure medications are actually a fascinating group of drugs because there's so much research out there that doesn't have a significant difference in taking them versus not. And all of these studies come from a book that I highly recommend. It's called The Paleocardiologist. It's written by an MD, Dr. Jack Wolfson, who used to practice in a typical medical cardiologist practice where he prescribed statins. He prescribed high blood pressure medications. He told people that they had to go get stents and all of these things for cardiac health until he realized that people really weren't getting well that way, that they were sure feeling better, but at the end of the day, they were really dying and having heart attacks at the same rates. And so he chose to start to treat people a little bit different. And he writes his experience in this book. And so statins, there was a study done in 1998 that had 6,000 participants without any known heart disease. Half of that group was given a statin, half of that group was given a placebo. And they found the difference in cardiac events in the drug group was 4.9% versus 6.4% in the placebo group. This means there's a 1.5% difference after 5 years of taking the drug. Can you imagine if your drug only gives you a 1.5% less chance of having a cardiac event? That's not very effective. And so this means 63 people need to take that drug for 5 years in order to prevent one person from having a cardiac event. That's not very good. That's 114,975 pills consumed in order to prevent one cardiac event from occurring. The number of people who died is the same in each group. That's the kicker over it. And so at the end of the day, I think statins and blood pressure medications, you have to be very careful with. And I think it's a good idea to find somebody who's a little bit more on the holistic realm of things in order to help them move you through the right type of blood work and help you to really heal again from the inside out overall. And so you look at secondary prevention in that same study, it reduced the risk 22% to 16%, a whopping 6%, right? There's another study at West of Scotland that looked at 5 years of a statin group. They had a 3.2% chance of dying versus 4.1% in the other placebo group. So again, we're looking at really a difference of 1 to 3%. And so let me ask you this. If you started to change your diet radically, if you got movement into your life, if you started to take care of your nervous system, the nerves that are supplying every single cell, tissue, and organ in your body, do you think you might be able to improve the function of your body by more than 1 to 5%? And the answer is absolutely. And so that's why we have to start to, again, look into the cause of what's going on. So let's dive into blood pressure. So blood pressure can be the silent killer because blood pressure, of course, is a big deal. Having high blood pressure can lead to things like stroke, blindness, heart attacks, kidney, renal issues. And so we need to know whether or not there's something going on with our blood pressure. And so when we look at blood pressure, we're really looking at the force in your arterial walls. And I think most of us know that there are two numbers that are in your blood pressure. You have your systolic number, which is on the top, and then your diastolic number, which is on the bottom. And so that number up until 2017 was considered normal if you were looking at 120 over 80. And so pre-hypertensive, if you look at this graph down here, this was in a Journal of American Medical Association 2003 study that was looking at, different things in blood pressure. So pre-hypertensive was considered 120 to 139 systolic, and then 80 to 89. And then you didn't have hypertension until you started looking at 140 to 159 for your systolic and 90 to 99 for your diastolic. And then all of a sudden, after 14 years in 2017, I don't know if you guys realize this, but just a couple years ago, they changed what was considered pre-hypertensive and hypertensive. And so one day they published this study, and now they said that hypertension happens at 130 to 139 in systolic. That's 10 points less. And so one day in 2017, all of these people woke up who did not have high blood pressure, and all of a sudden they had high blood pressure. And so the reason I shared this with you is just to share with you, these numbers are only guidelines. They are only guidelines. And yes, you don't want something like 160 over 100 for your blood pressure, but sometimes your blood pressure is going to raise. Why? Because your body needs to put blood to all of your cells and tissues for whatever reason. I'll give you an example. My dad not too long ago had an asthma attack, and he was really having trouble breathing. And when he had trouble breathing, he wasn't getting enough oxygen into his body. And so when you don't have oxygen in your body then says, hey, look, I want to increase my blood pressure because I need to get more blood circulating around my tissues to make sure that I'm getting more oxygen to the tissues because there's less oxygen available. Is that a bad thing? And the answer is no. And so he goes to the doctor because he's not breathing well and he's concerned, and he just wants to see what they have to say, and he wants to make sure that he doesn't have pneumonia or something like that. And he goes and he does these tests, and they say, hey, you have high blood pressure. Here's your high blood pressure medication. Do you want to bring that blood pressure down? And the answer is no. The body is doing that intelligently for a reason. And so we have to understand that while blood pressure being too high for too long might be a bad thing, also understand that just because it's a little bit elevated in the moment or for a period of time, your body might be working to be doing something that it needs to do. And so the cause is the cure. If you can remember that one thing, it's huge. So what questions should we be asking ourselves? Drugs can lower your blood pressure, but do they decrease your risk of heart attacks, strokes, or dying? Do they help with heart attacks overall? Well, again, you look into the research of how these drugs affect cardiac events and the outcomes. Sure, they bring blood pressure down, but do they affect cardiac events? 2014, there was a trial that found no reduction in heart attacks on patients with antihypertensive drugs. And so maybe they reduced strokes. Well, they found that stroke risk decreased from 5.5% down to 5%, a whopping 0.5% difference in strokes taking that medication. Maybe they decreased death. Well, there was a European drug trial that at a drug versus a placebo, and they found after 3 years 94.9% of the drug group was alive and 94.1% of the placebo group was alive. And so again, these medications don't make a huge difference in the cardiac event outcome. And then the question that you really have to ask yourself is there some harm that's being done when you're taking the medication? And so is the risk or the benefit, right, is it worth it? And in my mind, the answer is no, because again, can you eat well? Can you exercise? Can you adjust yourself and give yourself a better chance of decreasing your blood pressure or decreasing your cholesterol, your bad cholesterol? And the answer is yes. And so when we talk about the causes, the cure, these are the 5 essentials that we teach in our office. We teach chiropractic, nutrition, mindset, exercise, and minimizing toxins. Now, these 5 essentials, I think it's a funny word that we have the word essential here, because that's a big word right now in our culture, isn't it? You know, we talk about essential businesses that are staying open. What are your essential businesses? Your grocery store, your gas station, some of your big box stores like Walmart are considered essential. Why? Because can you imagine if grocery stores shut down right now? What would happen in our culture and our society? Everything would turn to chaos, and there would be a bunch of people fighting on the streets, and things would not be good if we couldn't get our essentials for living. And so the same is true of the 5 essentials. For the past 5 years in practice, I've been teaching people these essentials. They have been taking action and applying it in their lives, and with that, they have seen radical transformations. But here's the thing. Imagine if you took one of these essentials out. Imagine if you shut it down and you didn't do it. If you didn't pay any attention to your nutrition and how you were eating. Understand that there are essential foods and non-essential foods, and you cannot take non-essential foods and substitute them for essential foods. Why? Your body will break down. It will go into chaos, and that chaos ends up being inflammation, chronic disease, heart attacks, stroke, cancer, what have you. And so while these essentials sound really easy, unfortunately, even though they are simple, they're not all that easy. And so we know that there's a human aspect to this. And so that's why I say realize they're essential, realize we have to implement all of them in order to build health for a lifetime, not just for a week, not just for 6 months, but for the rest of your life. But don't be overwhelmed by it. Take it one at a time, and very small steps and small changes at a time is all it takes to see radical change in your health overall. So let's dive into the 5 essentials. We're going to start by talking about essential number 2, which is nutrition. And so I thought this was a funny little slide here. We talk about the evolution of man and where we came from. And so when we talk about the evolution of our diets, and we go back to our Paleolithic ancestors and what they used to eat, it is so much different than the things that we eat today. And so agriculture really only started about 10,000 years ago. And the agricultural revolution has completely changed our food. And so things like, freezing foods, refrigerating foods, grocery stores, processed foods that are in boxes, all of this has radically changed our health really over, just the past 10,000 years or so. And so I want to start by talking about fat. So we talked about how fat earlier, cholesterol isn't a bad thing, saturated fat isn't a bad thing. So where did this fat myth come from? So in the 1950s, there's a man named Ancel Keys, and he is one of the most celebrated nutritionists and physiologists and epidemiologists that lived way back when until he passed away. And so this man did a study, and it's called like the 7 year study. And he looked at people's intake of fat, and he correlated that to an increased risk of heart disease. And so, with that finding, at the end of the 1950s, America said, we have a war on fat. We will not eat fat anymore. And so, we switched our thought process and we said, low fat, fat free, take all of the fat out of everything. But when you take the fat out of things, you also take out the flavor. And so what do we add back in order to put flavor back in? And that's sugar. And remember, sugar is probably public enemy number one in our lives. It is the most addictive substance that we consume and the most toxic substance that we consume overall. And so here we are decades after we go fat free, and look at our society. You walk outside and you take a look around, and we're fatter than we've ever been. We're more obese than we've ever been before. And so lately in the news, we're starting to realize, there's another Time article that's fascinating when you start to look at the Time articles over time, that says eat more butter. And with the rise of like the keto diet, et cetera, we're realizing that fat isn't the enemy. It is sugar that's making us more toxic and more sick than ever before. And so when we talk about sugar, 25% of the American population's calorie consumption is from added sugars. And so sometimes people say, Dr. Elise, I don't eat sugar. And so one of my favorite things to have people do is do like a food log or a food diary, because I love when people say, and there might be some people on this line right now, I love when people say, oh, I really don't eat all that poorly. And then I have them go home and write every single thing down that they put in their mouth for 7 days, and they come back in, and 9 out of 10 times I hear them say, Dr. Elise, it was just a bad week. And so it wasn't a bad week. That's how you eat on a regular basis. You eat processed foods, you eat bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, you put sugar into your coffee, you have sweets, you have, the donuts that somebody put in the break room at work. And so all of these things are in your diet. And we have to understand every bite either fuels health or it fuels disease. It fuels health or it fuels disease. And so start to look at your food and say to yourself, is this helping me to be healthy or not? And so the incognito sugars, the added sugars that are almost in every box, every condiment, every soup, every can, will end in OS. And so OS is, glucose, fructose, high fructose corn syrup, for example, sucrose, agave, fruit juice concentrate, evaporated cane sugar, brown rice syrup. These are all the things that are labeled in your foods that you have to know that is sugar. And so there is a huge trial that looked at sugar and how it increased the rate of cardiovascular deaths by 250%. There's a 2013 study that shows that for every additional 150 kilocalories of sugar daily, that's just one can of soda, you're increasing your risk of diabetes by 1%. So if you have one soda every day for the next year, you are increasing your risk of diabetes by 365%. That's crazy. And diabetics are at a threefold risk. So they have a 300% increased risk of heart disease, of cancer, and of dementia. And by the way, when you look at those three leading causes of death, heart disease, cancer, and dementia, in the American culture right now, your chances of getting one of those three, if you choose to continue to live the way that you might be living right now, or to live the way that the average American is living, your chances of having one of those three is in the 90% of one of those three. That's a huge reason to start living life a little bit different. And so maybe for you here tonight, this is the first time that you're like, wow, I have to cut sugar out of my diet. I have to minimize the sugars. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is pesticides. And so toxicity, which is essential number 5. And so again, toxins have a huge effect on your cells and your body overall. And so specifically, this is very interesting. But if you think about what pesticides do to bugs, they kill bugs, right? If a pesticide is strong enough to kill a bug, what do you think it's doing within our own bodies? And so you start to talk about medications too. When we talked about like high blood pressure medication and statins, what is the harm of taking a medication? Well, if right now I took an entire bottle of aspirin and I said, hey guys, I'm just going to down this whole bottle of aspirin right now, hopefully all of you on the line here right now would be jumping out of your seats and coming over here and saying, hey, no, don't do that. And the reason being is because I would die, because that would literally be so toxic to my body. And so what is the difference between one aspirin and an entire bottle of aspirin at one time? And the difference is a slow death a slow death with one versus a quick death with the other. But understand that there is a consequence for every pill that you put in your body. And so we can't do a pill for every ill because that can be toxic to us. And there is a time and a place for a medication. The time and the place is when it's saving your life. And so understand that. But I'm talking about the chronic illnesses that you're taking medications for. You can't just take a pill for the rest of your life. And so some pretty interesting research just on pesticide use and how that affects us. This is a reason as much as you can to be buying organic foods. And so they found that farmers who were exposed to pesticides, they had an increased risk of heart attacks and death. There was a study in 2012 that showed that people who were exposed to persistent organic pollutants, POPs, they had increased risk of atherosclerosis. And then you start to look into something like Roundup, which is Monsanto, which is the largest used pesticide in the entire world. And you look at the effects of these pesticides on people, and it doesn't take much to find what it does. Glyphosate is the molecule that Monsanto uses. That's what Roundup is. It causes LDL damage. It increases the stickiness within your blood. It damages the vascular endothelium. It blocks mineral absorption. It increases brain fog. It decreases amino acid production. And so much happens because of this glyphosate in the body that's coming from all of these non-organic foods. And it's also linked to things like dementia, Parkinson's, cancer. Has over 100 studies showing that Monsanto is linked to cancer, diabetes, hormonal abnormalities, asthma, birth defects, heart disease. All of this can be linked back to pesticide use. And so again, toxicity is a huge thing that we're dealing with these days in our country. There's a fantastic study that was done by the Environmental Working Group that I don't have cited here, but you can look it up. And it looked at umbilical cord blood in babies. And it found already at birth, because of passing between mother and child, you have all kinds of known neurotoxins, carcinogens already within the body. And so there is a toxic load at birth. And then you think of just a day in the life of the average person who's not thinking about this, the flame retardants that are all over our furniture and our floors, the personal care products, the shower gel, the shampoo, the conditioner, the toothpaste that has fluoride in it, the aluminum in our deodorants, and all of these things over time, they add up. And that certainly affects cell function in your body overall. And so we have to make sure that we're detoxing. And so when we talk about foods, we want to try to do organic as much as possible. A really good rule of thumb is going with the dirty dozen and the clean 15. The dirty dozen are the things that you want to buy always organic. The clean 15 are the things that you can get away with not getting organic. And you can find that if you just Google dirty dozen and clean 15 online. A rule of thumb, though, if you don't have that with you, is if it has a shell on the outside that you can peel off of it, you can get away with not getting it organic. If it's soft and fleshy, you probably want to get it organic. And so when we talk about foods, we want to do a lot of good fats. Where does good fat come from? It comes from good quality proteins. And so in your protein, you want to do grass-fed beef, free-range chicken, and wild-caught fish. It is very well known that people who are eating more fish, but it has to be good source fish, so it's mercury in it, but people who are eating good quality fish most of the time and minimizing animal products tend to be people who are a little bit healthier, but animal products certainly aren't bad as long as you're getting good quality animal products. Avocados are a great source of fat. Coconut, so coconut cream, coconut oil, coconut milk, all of these things have good quality fats in it and good quality saturated fats. Nuts and seeds will also give you good fats. And then, of course, you want to do a good amount of leafy greens, which are going to give you a lot of vitamins and minerals. And then you want to do some fruits. The idea behind fruits is you want to make sure that you're doing lower sugar fruits. And so that's going to be things like berries, and green apples tend to have a little bit less sugar in them. While it's not glucose or added sugar, it's fructose, which is a little bit better. It's a different molecule that you have within the body. It is still a molecule that increases insulin and can cause issues with somebody, especially if they're dealing with chronic health conditions. I wanted to highlight eggs for a second because I feel like eggs get a bad rap. And so some people say don't eat a ton of eggs. Eggs are awesome. They are like nature's multivitamin. They have so much good stuff in it, from proteins to essential fatty acids, cholesterol. They have minerals in it. They have vitamins in it. And so many good things come from eggs. I think eggs should be a regular part of a good, healthy diet overall. So don't get the egg whites. You can always get the whole egg because most of that nutrition is located within that yolk. And so make sure you're eating a ton of eggs. Essential number 4 is making sure that you're moving. And so there is so much research that connects exercise to good quality life and to good quality health. And it's not just heart disease, but it's especially heart disease. Back in the day, doctors used to say, if you have a heart issue, do not exercise. And we know that is 100% backwards and completely wrong. You have to get movement in your life. When you oxygenate your life, your cells, that's how your body starts to heal. And so there's so many cancers that do not thrive in oxygen. And that helps to balance out your hormones, and it will help to actually clean that plaque out of your vessels as well. And so there is absolutely no bad research saying that exercise is bad for you. It is necessary and it is good for you. And I'll take a moment to say, it doesn't have to be 45 minutes of exercise every single day. It just has to be a small, consistent habit. If you're only doing 10 minutes, I have a lady who came to one of my workshops probably a couple years back now. She might be on the line. But I said this and she really took it to heart. She said, I'm just going to do 10 minutes every single day. I have 10 minutes to do something. If you just did 10 minutes of exercise every day for the next month, 2 months, 6 months, year, you will see a change not only in how you feel, but how you look and how you're functioning too. It's all it takes. You don't have to do much. It's 10 to 30 minutes. And the best way to do that is something like an interval training, high intensity interval training. Dr. Thaddeus, myself, and Katie, our newest team member, we're going to be doing a Facebook Live workout on Wednesday night on our Facebook group. So if you're not a part of the Facebook group, feel free to join it. It's called Vitality Family Chiropractic Health Warriors. And so it's going to be a Facebook Live this time. If you don't have Facebook, let us know. We'll figure out how to get you plugged in so that you can see that too. And you can see how easy it is to do a workout with absolutely no equipment. So it doesn't matter that we're in quarantine right now. It doesn't matter that you're at home. You can do it right in your living room or out back. And the idea is just to get your heart rate up. And as you get your heart rate up, all of these amazing things happen within your health overall. So move more. And then there's mindset, essential number 3. So this is interesting. What do Monday mornings, holidays, returning from vacation, the Super Bowl, and basketball all have in common? Basketball playoffs all have in common. So what these things all have in common is they tend to be, and I could add Christmas time in here actually, the Christmas holidays could be in here too. What they have in common is they literally have the most cardiac events that happen during this time. They're elevated cardiac events that happen during this time. Why? Because they tend to be a little bit more stressful. So people get stressed out on Monday mornings because they don't want to go to work. They get stressed out through Christmas and the holidays because you have traveling, you have increase in drinking and bad foods. Returning from vacation tends to be a little bit stressful, getting back to your normal life. And Super Bowls and basketball playoffs apparently too tend to get a little bit stressful also. And so making sure that we're helping to minimize our emotional stress and our mental stress is so important. And so if you search stress and coronary artery disease in PubMed, which is a resource for finding research, there are 17,000 studies that come up. There's a 2002 study that looked at men and women and looked at stress with metabolic syndrome and heart disease. And they found that caregiver men had twice the risk of heart disease compared to non-caregiver men. And so caregiver men, meaning men who are taking care of somebody else who has a health condition, so their level of stress is a little bit higher, they have twice the risk of heart disease. Heart attacks are 50% more common in individuals who experience stress, and survival tends to be lower in the people who have more stress in their life. And so somebody who has a heart attack who is stressed out is less likely to survive the heart attack than somebody who is not. There was another study that was done that found that patients with high psychological stress and cardiac rehab were almost 4 times as likely to die. And so if you don't think your mental state has an effect on your health, that's a huge gut check. It definitely does. And so I did a Facebook Live earlier today, and I think it's important to realize that we have more control over our thoughts than we think we do. We have more control over our thoughts than we think we do. And I think this next slide here, I think I took it out here, but that's okay. I talk about, here it is, changing your Muzak. And so we don't realize, but we have thousands of thoughts on a daily basis, and upwards of 90% of those thoughts are exactly the same. And so my question for you is, how are you talking to yourself? If you analyzed your thoughts from the second you woke up in the morning to the second you went to sleep, what would you be saying to yourself? And chances are what you focus on is what you're lacking, what you don't have, how horrible you did, how you don't have enough in your life, how you can't or you won't, or how could you. And so the human nature is to tend to put a negative spin on things. And so if I talk to you the way you talk to you, you'd never come back into our office. So how are you talking to yourself? You have to start to change your Muzak. And so the Muzak comes from, there's a pastor a while ago who did a sermon, and he talked about Muzak. Muzak was the company when department stores kind of first started playing music and department stores first became a thing. This company had the biggest monopoly over all department stores. Everybody played Muzak, and it was a CD of tracks, and they played the same tracks over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so the analogy there is the Muzak going on in your head. What track is playing over and over and over again? If it's a negative track, you have to change it. And so I can tell you that this is a muscle that you build, just like anything else. Nobody likes to get up in the morning, or maybe there's a few of you weirdos out there that like to get up in the morning, but most people, they'd rather lay in bed till 10 o'clock. And so when you have to get up at 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, man, everybody says, I don't want to get up today. And so you have to start talking back to yourself. What if you started every day for the next 30 days and you got up out of bed and you said, today is going to be an amazing day. I can't see the miracle that happens today. Today is going to be an amazing day. I can't wait to see the miracle that happens today. How do you think that might change the tone for your morning and the tone for your day? And so we have to figure out things that help us to de-stress and that help us to start to think a little bit more positively. One thing that you can do to help to change your Muzak is to start to journal. And I like to journal what I'm grateful for. And so gratitude practice is huge for changing and rewiring your brain, and it can help to decrease stress. The other thing is faking smiling. And so if you just sit there and you smile and you do that for like 40, 45 seconds to a minute, you'll start to actually feel happy, because faking smiling releases chemicals in your body and helps overall. Also making sure that you're getting sleep. Sleep is the time when your body is able to heal. If you're not getting sleep, you are not healing. In times of higher stress, you want to sleep more. Do not feel guilty for getting 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep during high stress times. Your body is asking for it and it needs it. If you cannot get that sleep, to put naps in the middle of the day. There is no shame in that overall, but you must make sure you're getting that sleep that you need in order to heal. Exercise is a huge thing for de-stressing too. There's so many benefits to exercise. And then try to simplify your schedule. One of the things that I like to do is called a war plan. And so I war plan out my weeks. I do it for my home life and I do it for my work life. And if I didn't, I would never get anything done. And some people think a plan sounds like restrictive, but when you start to implement it, you actually find that it's freeing, because you already know when you're going to get everything done. And so I have a running list of everything that I need to get done in my week. And then what I do is on Sundays, I plan out my days and I know exactly what I'm going to get done on those days. That way I don't have to worry about laundry, or I don't have to worry about grocery shopping, or I don't have to worry about when I'm going to clean the bathroom, because all of it is in my war plan and all of it's planned out. And there's some flexibility in there with being able to move things if I need to, but also try to simplify that war plan. What are the things that you can cut out for a season and maybe get rid of for a period of time? What are some things that you can learn to say no to right now? Some social gatherings that you just don't really need to go to. And what are some things that might help if you said yes to them? And so helping to de-stress and rest is so important. And the very last thing that's absolutely critical is looking at your nervous system. And so the chiropractic principle, the reason that you guys come into our office is because you understand that there is an innate intelligence that governs your entire body. And so every time you get adjusted, when we give you a big high five or maybe an elbow bump these days, and we say the power is on, the reason we're saying that is because the power that made and heals your body is flowing through your body with every adjustment. Somebody asked me earlier today, Dr. Elise, what's happening when you adjust me? And so literally what's happening is we are changing what's called proprioceptive input. Proprioception is looking at how your bones are articulating. When they're articulating improperly, it changes the messages that are going up to your brain. So when you can restore that proper proprioceptive input, the messages are now going up to your brain the right way, and your brain is now able to respond to your body in the right way. And those nerves don't just go to your muscles and ligaments, they go to every single cell, tissue, and organ in your body. So your nervous system is much like the electrical system in your house. If the electrical system goes out, if a wire gets shorted, whatever that wire goes to your lamp or your toaster or your toaster oven, it won't work. And so you have to make sure that electrical system is working and functioning the way that it needs to. You have to make sure that nervous system is working and functioning the way that it needs to. If it's not, you will not be healthy. And so that's the idea of chiropractic. It's not for back pain. It's not for back pain. It's not for headaches, even though it helps with those things. But the purpose of every single adjustment is to get your body healing and functioning, again, not just for a period of time, but for your entire life. And so this set of x-rays here I want to share with you. One of them was taken in a different direction. That's why it kind of looks opposite there. But I want to show you here on the left-hand side, you're looking at somebody's cervical spine. So you're looking at their neck. And so the back of the head is there on the left-hand side of that left picture. You can see over on the right-hand side, there's some teeth. And so the person is facing to the right on the screen. So a normal cervical curve is 45 degrees. On the right-hand side, you can see that yellow line. That's a normal 45-degree curve. Can you see on that left-hand side how this person's neck at the very base of it is actually going in the opposite direction? So it's not a C-shaped curve. It's actually a reverse curve going in the opposite direction. You guys see that? And so with that reverse curve at the base of the neck, how well do you think that person's nervous system is functioning? Do you think that their power's on? Do you think their electrical system is sending all of the messages from their brain to their body? Or do you think there might be some shortages there? And with that reverse curve in the neck, what could that be causing? Well, the nerves in the middle of the neck are the ones that go to the thyroid. So maybe that's causing some hormonal issues. The ones at the base of the neck are the ones that come out and go to the heart and go to the lungs. And so there's all kinds of things, neck pain, numbness and tingling down into the arms, into the hands. There's so much that could be going wrong because of that reverse cervical curve. You look at the right-hand side and you can see that this is actually an x-ray that was taken 15 years later. And look at that person's curve. It's not perfect, but it's a heck of a lot better. And so I share this x-ray with you because these are my x-rays. And so when I was younger, I used to get really bad headaches. And so over on the left-hand side, you can see the reason I was getting headaches is because, man, I had a compressed spinal cord. And those nerves that were going into my head and supplying blood to my head, they choked off, and because of that I was getting migraines, and they were pretty bad. I also had menstrual issues, hormonal issues for a very long time, and while they're not perfect, they're a lot better. The same way, while my neck now is not perfect, it's a lot better. And so taking care of your spine is a lifelong process, because you're never ever going to get rid of all of the things that affect the spine and affect your health overall. But I just wanted to share with you that's the importance of taking care of the nervous system. And so, what are your next steps here? So, no matter who you are, there's always a next step on the line. And so, whether you're a guest right now on the line, if you'd like to schedule a nervous system evaluation in our office or a consultation with me for free over a virtual consultation, we can help you to get set up with that. I'm going to put in our email address here. You're also going to be redirected to a website so that you can schedule an appointment online if you want to, and we'll give you all of the details when you give us a call. If you're a current patient, I'm putting our email address in right now so you can email us if you'd like to make an appointment. If you're a current patient, you want to pick the one thing you want to tackle. What's the one thing that you're going to do differently from this point forward? And I also wanted to let you guys know that we're having our next workshop 2 weeks from today. And so I started putting together an immunity workshop. It's called Max Immunity for you guys, so that we can start to talk about immune function and what depresses immune function, and what you can do in order to help to engage your immune system and help to support it, especially during this time. And so pick that one thing. I'm going to scroll back up through these comments here. If you guys have any questions, please ask your questions here on the right-hand side, and we're going to get all of those answered. All right. Hello, everybody on here. Linda said, what's the name of the book? The book that I was talking about earlier, it's called The Paleo Cardiologist. The Paleo Cardiologist by Jack Wolfson. Oh, and it looks like Angela wrote that below there. You got it, Angela. Fantastic book. I've read it multiple times. So Jim says the Dirty Dozen is at the top. The Clean 15 is at the bottom of the 50 produce items. What about the ones in the middle? And I think the ones in the middle are do your best. And so, I don't always buy everything organic. I had somebody one time bring me a meal and they said, Dr. Leese, the spices aren't organic. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, man, I don't always get everything organic. I get organic what I can do. And so I think it depends on what's within your means, of course, financially. And then also what's available within your grocery store. And so there's some things that does and that I always buy organic. And if it's not organic, I just don't get it. Everything in the middle, I think, is give or take. Look at the prices. Sometimes the organic stuff is actually less expensive than the non-organic stuff. So it just depends on where you go and where you're shopping. But organic is better than not when you can help it. Esmeralda says, will you please share recipes that we can do in a crock pot? In the office, we have an entire binder of crock pot recipes. If you want to email the email address that I put up there, which is vitalityfamilychiro@gmail.com, I will email you over crock pot recipes. We have those within our Google Drive as well, and I can share those with you. And so, Esmeralda, if you just want to email us and say, hey, will you share the crock pot recipes, or you can check them out in the office and take some pictures. So is caffeine a toxin? What alternatives do you recommend for coffee lovers? So I think too much caffeine certainly has an adverse effect on your body, especially if you're somebody who is high stress. Caffeine can really tax your adrenals. Your adrenals are tiny little glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and they're really important for kind of stress metabolism within your hormones, such as cortisol. And so if you're super stressed out, caffeine is actually taxing your adrenals even more, and that can lead to some pretty serious issues like adrenal fatigue. And so some people who are dealing with adrenal fatigue will deal with things like just you wake up in the morning and you're tired and you have an entire cup of coffee and you're still tired, or somebody who's really just exhausted throughout the day and you go to lay your head down at night and your mind is racing and you're like, why can't I sleep? And so a lot of that can indicate hormonal imbalances and adrenal fatigue. And so you want to start a process to heal those adrenals. I think coffee once in a while isn't bad. A lot of people don't realize that coffee tends to be one of the crops that's most sprayed with pesticides. And so the coffee that you're generally speaking from Starbucks, etc., is not organic, and it tends to have a higher pesticide load. There are some better quality coffee beans that you can Google online that are all organic and that tend to be a little bit more clean. The other thing that you have to be worried about is the processing of the beans. And so the processing of the beans can cause some toxicity within that as well. And so coffee in and of itself once in a while, I think, is okay. I think the biggest thing you have to worry about is getting it from a clean source. And if you can cut it out, of course, having less caffeine just tends to be better for you overall. is raw honey okay to sweeten my tea? So raw honey actually has a lot of really good benefits. And so there are some things that some people want to stay away from, and some people can certainly continue to consume. I think honey once in a while, especially like Melaleuca honey or local honey, they tend to help with a lot of things. And so it can help to ease allergy burden because it has pollen that your body kind of gets introduced to. And there's some healing properties that happen within honey too. If you're somebody who's dealing with chronic health issues, I wouldn't suggest doing honey all the time. And so I would suggest doing it sparingly once in a while and using some sugar alternatives, which I didn't go over. So thank you for asking that. Stevia and xylitol. When it comes to stevia and xylitol, you want to make sure you're getting pure forms. And I find that liquid stevia tends to be less bitter. If you're somebody who's tried the powdered stevia and you're like, the aftertaste, I can't do it, you get the liquid stevia. And then they also have flavors of liquid stevia like vanilla, and that tends to take the bitterness away from it as well. And so honey once in a while is definitely okay. I just wouldn't make a habit of it. I would try to do stevia, xylitol, or I would try to really back away from all sweeteners overall if you can. Esmeralda says, what is a healthier drink? That's a great question. Water. So water is the best drink you could possibly have. One of your one things, if you still don't have your one thing yet that you could take away from this webinar here tonight, is drinking just water every morning, getting up and doing 2 glasses of water. There's so much water that leaves your body because your body uses it while you're sleeping. And so one of the best times to drink water is in the morning. Doing 2 big glasses of water will give you energy and will start your day fantastically. Besides water, even though water should be number one, I hesitate to say anything else. I drink green tea, so unsweetened iced green tea. Green tea has a lot of good health benefits to it. I do kombucha, which is a fermented tea that you can either make on your own or you can purchase it. Just make sure that there's not a lot of added sugar in it. And that's basically, I think, what I drink overall. And so kombucha, tea, you can do an iced black tea also, as long as it's unsweetened, and just a ton of water. Let's see here. What is the best way to find a holistic provider to address high blood pressure? I think you can start with us in our office. There's a lot of things that I can guide you through. I don't think that you need, there's most people, 90% of people, 95% of people, they heal just by applying the 5 essentials. And so what I would try doing first is, I know that, Linda, you're somebody who makes your adjustments, so keep doing that. And then I would try first digging into diet and exercise. And if for some reason you start to do diet 100%, exercise 100%, and you're doing that for the next, let's say, 60 to 90 days, and you don't see a change, then we can start to talk a little bit more about some more in-depth things that we can do together. But diet and exercise is something that I would do to make sure that we're addressing that high blood pressure. The sweetener that is better is going to be stevia and xylitol. And then Lois said, I found that xylitol has no aftertaste, and I agree. Xylitol, you just want to make sure that you're not using too much of it. It can aggravate the digestive system if you use too much of it, but it can be used teaspoon for teaspoon, just like sugar, and it doesn't tend to have an aftertaste at all. Do you think mineral water is okay? Yes. So like Topo Chico, I forgot, I have Topo Chico or like LaCroix in our house. We drink that too. The other thing that we have that I have once in a while as a treat is a stevia sweetened soda called Zevia. And that is great. It is spelled Zevia. You can get it at Whole Foods, Kroger, Target. So that's a great substitute. But mineral waters are okay too. Linda says, add lemon, oranges, or cucumber, and that adds a little bit of flavor. Absolutely. So awesome. I'm going to leave this open for a couple more minutes, and I'm going to check my phone here to see if anybody texted me. And I don't see any questions from anybody on there. So any other questions? All right. What about Swerve? Yes, Swerve is good. So you can use Swerve. I think Swerve has some monk fruit in it too, and monk fruit tends to be lower on the glycemic index. Great question. Awesome. So as we are, Linda, I don't know if the slides are available. I will make them available to you. Not a problem at all. I can email over the entire PowerPoint to you, or anybody else that wants it. As we're closing this out here, I want everybody on the right-hand side, just tell us what your one thing is. What is your one thing? Publicly declare it that you're going to start to work on. And so your one thing could be starting to put exercise back in your routine. It could be minimizing or even eliminating sugar. It could be putting a mindset practice or a stress relieving practice into your life. It could be switching out your personal care products to better quality products or your home care products. I'm going to do a Facebook Live sometime this week. And so look out for that on Vitality Family Chiropractic Health Warriors, where I show you all of my personal care products and what I use. And so that way you have some ideas of what you can purchase. What else? It could be spending more time with family and rebuilding relationships, figuring out what's stressing you out and taking that stress away. It could be planning out your weeks. It could be recommitting to your home care exercises, the wobble and the neck traction and the head weight at home. It could be upping up your frequency if you're only being seen every other week in the office, or if you have fallen off track with your adjustments, it could be getting back on track. So what are you going to do in order to move yourself forward? And so we have advanced plan for 90 days. I think that's awesome. I'm down for that challenge too. And actually, guys, if you want to, I was thinking about a lose the quarantine 15 challenge. So I was thinking about putting that together. Maybe we can get that started next week if you think you'd be excited for that. That way we can get some accountability and maybe do some prizes. So I see minimizing coffee, increasing water first thing in the morning. That's a good one. Investigate toxins in the home, move more, putting movement and exercise into my life, recommitting to exercise, drinking more water. I love it. So you guys are so awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope that you got some value out of this evening. If there are any more questions that you have, please feel free to either email or in the office, ask me anything that you need to. So I love you guys tremendously, and I am so honored to be a part of your health journey. So have a great evening.